ICE goes in and they get them out. They get them out. They put them in jail or they throw them out of the country, and they don't even think about it. And now there's a move on to get rid of ICE because ICE is tough. If you don't have tough people doing that job, you're going to have crime like you've never seen it.
President Trump blasting Dems that are pushing to abolish ICE. Meanwhile, the showdown underway on Capitol Hill, with the House preparing to vote on a resolution to support ICE after a growing number of Democrats called to abolish the agency. Let's bring in Texas Congressman Michael McCaul, chairman of the Homeland Security Committee. I know you've got some strong thoughts on this, Mr. Chairman. What do you think about this cry from Democrats?
Well, I think it's a very reckless, dangerous policy to abolish an agency that was created after 9/11 to protect Americans from dangerous people, criminals, drug dealers, potential terrorists. You know, the Secretary told me they stop on average about 10 terrorists a day that try to get into the United States, known or suspected terrorists. And I just think it's very irresponsible. It's just a political move on their part, and we're going to put this bill on the floor today, and we'll see who votes to support ICE and who doesn't. What
do you expect to come of that?
I don't know. I mean, I'm hearing some rumors that they may vote present. Not exactly a profile in courage, but, you know, ICE does a lot more than what you see down the border right now with the unaccompanied minor children. They stop a lot of bad things from coming in the United States, including fentanyls and opioids, human traffickers, MS-13. When I was a federal prosecutor after 9/11, we used our immigration laws to get terrorists, suspected terrorists, out of the country because sometimes you can't charge, you know, providing material support for terrorism. Again, I think it's a misinformed, uneducated, irresponsible move.
Yeah, what the latest that we are hearing is that the House Republican leaders will not hold this quick vote on the Democratic bill that calls on abolishing immigration and customs enforcement, and instead offering a non-binding GOP measure, a resolution instead of the Democratic legislation. But you're not exactly sure why or if that's happening.
Well, I think that's an option that leadership has possibly down the road, is to put the Democrat bill on the floor as well. And this is, Sandra, it's so important to mention that you know, my bill to authorize ICE for the first time into law passed last year overwhelmingly, with nearly every Democrat voting for it, including Nancy Pelosi and the author now of the bill to abolish ICE. Less than a year ago, they were all in favor of ICE and voted to authorize it into law. This is a complete hypocrisy. And it's pure politics.
Well, your Republican colleague in the Senate, Marco Rubio, was on our program a bit earlier, and he did not mince words when it came to what he thinks about calls to abolish ICE. Listen.
I think that's a radical and dumb idea that's rejected by the vast majority of Americans. People can disagree about immigration policy. I think we have to have immigration laws. I think they have to be enforced. And I think ICE does a lot more than just immigration enforcement. Bottom line is, if you don't like the laws or our immigration laws, I think we have to have them. We're a sovereign nation. You can change the law, but they are law enforcers.
It will be really interesting to see where everybody stands on this ultimately, if we do.
And I think Marco's right. I mean, 70% of the American people favor ICE as a law enforcement agency, stopping bad things and people coming into the country. Otherwise, it's lawlessness. And I think this is going to blow back on the Democrats. I don't think the majority of the American people are with them on this one.
Meanwhile, we've got this live shot in the corner of the screen here that we are awaiting anything that we could possibly see or hear out of the president's cabinet meeting. It is underway, half past the hour. It began there in the White House. All of this just hours, days following the president's controversial words on that stage, standing next to Vladimir Putin in Helsinki. Could I get your thoughts as we await to hear the president?
Well, I'm glad the president retracted or sort of corrected his statements about our intelligence community. I got briefed on the Russian interference in our elections in October of 2016 before the election. I called upon then the Obama administration to call out Russia for what they were doing, that we had to have consequences. And I also have briefed this president on this issue. To me, it's clear and convincing evidence in the intelligence community that Russia did interfere or attempted to in our elections. And as in a democracy, that really cannot stand. And Senator, that's why we passed the sanctions against Russia, because of their aggression in Crimea and Ukraine, but also their efforts to meddle in our elections in 2016 presidential. What I worry about is going into the midterm elections, we're seeing some intelligence that they may try to do this again.
What would you like to hear from the president if we hear him speak a few minutes from now?
I think to again, vindicate our intelligence community's assessment on this, and to take a tough position against Russia. They're not our friend, they're our foreign adversary, and they attack us every day, and they're getting very aggressive with submarine warfare capability as well. The one area where Russia, I think, we could work together is trying to resolve this conflict in Syria, which has created one of the greatest humanitarian crises we've seen in a generation, and a lot of problems with ISIS and terrorism. That's one area I think we can work together.
So it sounds like you'd like to hear the president again say that he backs up the intelligence community and their findings on Russian meddling in our elections, and you'd like to hear the president be tough on Russia. Is this president tough enough on Russia as far as you see and from your perspective?
Well, I do think the sanctions are tough. I think the actions are tough. The rhetoric doesn't seem to match the actions. And I'd like to say, I understand he wants to have a good relationship, but let's be clear-eyed about who we're dealing with. A former KGB officer who's been very aggressive globally, has used cyber operations to hurt the West and Europe. And I think it's important that he also reaffirm our position with NATO, that NATO is an important ally institution created after World War II as a buffer to the Soviet Union. We have to know who our enemies are, who our friends and allies are, and I think it's important that any president make that clear.
Great to have you on. We are awaiting the president holding his cabinet meeting in the White House right now. Chairman Michael McCaul, thank you, and nice to see you this morning.
Thank you, Sandra.